Hello and welcome to post-match reaction to France versus Italy. It all finished 34-17 to France, so a comfortable win in the end, but it didn't look like that earlier on. And to review the game with me, I have Matt from the Line Break podcast. How you doing, sir?
You just say Matt?
Sorry, Edward. Oh no, Ed. God. Oh, here we. Starting off on a great note there.
No worries.
We're professionals through and through. Sorry, how are you doing, Ed?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, thank you. And I say, nice to see you in your All Blacks jersey there.
I've literally just thrown this on for the occasion.
There you go. And Jeff from the Loose Head Twitter account. You've not made an effort. I mean, you're just wearing some sort of polo shirt.
Well, you caught me on the hop, so.
So, as you can tell with the accents, Jeff is from Ireland, and Ed and I are English. Even if I am based down here in New Zealand, don't get the shirts mixed up as to who's having an early morning and who's having a late night.
I'm just trying to make it difficult for people.
And since we're talking about jerseys, I think we should start there. The Rugby Shirt Watch put a poll up saying, "Is this the best combination of jerseys in the Six Nations?" And to me, it's horrible.
Not. I know it's different in France, but their secondary strip just currently looks like a rugby league shirt.
It does, doesn't it? The chevrons, whilst I do enjoy some chevrons, it is a rugby league thing. It's not a union thing. And then, what if Italy? To me, it was France Rugby League versus Italy fake gold. What have they done to deserve putting gold on their jerseys? Gold is
quite tidy, I think.
Gold is for winners, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So that's my only complaint there. So anyway, moving on to actually some real rugby rather than just the this. For those of you watching live, I've got the chat open. So any questions or comments, please put them in there, and we'll cover those as well. Obviously, for those of you on the podcast, do subscribe and all of that kind of lovely stuff. But early on, we had basically lots of forwards and power bashing up, not really breaking the gain line, and then they would either kick or get penalties to try and get territory. It was kind of fairly sort of go through the phases, keep it tight early doors, don't you think?
I think the first half was atrocious, to be honest with you. I mean, both teams getting penalties and deciding to go touchline. And even at one stage, Garado, 5 meters out, decided to tap and go himself. And it's strange to see a hooker do that, maybe, and he captained. So maybe it's a lack of leadership. Maybe it's not being smart, taking the points, building the lead, putting them away early. But it was just mistake after mistake, wasn't it?
In the first half, it was. But I mean, I thought the first French try was pretty good. I mean, they got them all. It all collapsed down, and suddenly these arms telescoped out of a pile of bodies and touched the ball down, which I thought was a nice sneaky try there.
Serious finish, a serious maul, but 4 minutes later they get dominated. So you'd have to question them there as a.
I think both sides early doors had got their own mauls working, but couldn't defend them all to save their lives. Let's be honest. The Italians looked like they'd scored from a maul. When we actually reviewed it, they hadn't got the ball down, but they were lucky that the French got penalised for collapsing it, and they got a penalty try. France got a little bit lucky there.
That was a rather dubious decision, I think. I'm not
never a penalty try.
I'm getting more and more fond of Wayne Barnes, and I've seen a lot of people say he's probably the best ref going at the moment, and his communication's probably the thing that puts him above the rest. And I liked watching him work out the decision for the penalty try. But if you can't work out if a Frenchman has actually sacked the Italian maul, has a Frenchman actually sacked an Italian maul, and is it fair to give a penalty try when it's quite possible that was actually the Italians just bringing it down themselves?
Well, it comes back to that rule, doesn't it? If you can't see a clear reason, it should be the defending team getting the benefit of the doubt. The opposite happened, really.
Yes,
yeah, he called it a clear sack, but as you say, he couldn't name a player.
Exactly. When he went back to the replay, it was, I think the words he used was that, the French pulled it down, but I can't see which one it was. which means it's not even remotely clear. So I think Italy were quite lucky in that regard.
They would have gone back to a penalty anyway, so they would have picked up some points. Because they were playing advantage because of swimming around the ruck in that piece. So maybe they got a bit lucky there, and I think we were lucky that they did, because otherwise this game wouldn't have been tight and would have been sort of one-way traffic, really.
Yeah,
because
I do think, I want to say it's going to be so horribly trite and cliched when I say it, but very much a game of two halves, just because it is. I think the phrase I was going to use originally was that it just seemed like a comedy of errors. Do you swear? Can you swear on this podcast?
I try and generally keep away from swearing on the podcast.
Oh, in that case, I'll refrain from my where I was going to go on the other side then. But it's the first half, I think, or even the first 50 minutes, was epitomised by, I think, about 3 minutes of play from a scrum to the Italian penalty on the 22, where I'm trying to remember it now. I had it all in my head, but possession seemed to change like it was nothing. There was certainly the beginning of the second half, France absolutely battered Italy off their own ruck, stole possession, passed it down the line, and then even if you do argue that there was an Italian hand in there anyway, France still managed to knock the ball on and concede possession, give away a scrum. And the entire game was like that. Gain possession and then just chuck it away, because why should they have it? It was very much a game of who wants to win the least.
In saying that, when France were attacking in the first half, I think it was Grosso. They were really punching the line, maybe 2 meters out. Grosso knocks on and Italy clear. And you think that they'd be more patient getting in that position to finally get there, and to turn around and make such a simple mistake, really, by knocking on over or not even over the line, but just not taking care of the ball, going into contact 2 meters from the line. And then you have Italy's penalty count. They were never going to win the game with the penalty count they had, and I can't believe it took so long for a yellow card to come out. I counted 13 penalties. There was maybe 14 even, but they only got the yellow for the last lap down, and a team's never going to win with such poor discipline. I know Zebra did it there a week ago against Connacht. They shipped over 20 but still won the game, but this is not a Pro 14 game, and as much stick as you give France, they're going to win if you give them that chance. And what struck me probably is odd more than anything, kind of humorous, was Camara, easily their best player. Today, maybe Bastro could have taken that, but Camara goes off and suddenly the game opens up and he's their best ball carrier for 60 minutes or 55 minutes, and suddenly the game opens up when their best ball carrier goes off.
Well, you managed to miss a couple, because apparently there were 16 penalties against Italy in that game,
okay.
According to the stats I've got. So, yeah, they were definitely giving up quite a lot. It took about 16 minutes before the French actually started to make some line breaks in that first half. And every single time, as you say, they made the line breaks. They got to pressurise the Italian the try line, and they either knocked it on, gave up a penalty, or just turned it over. And it was just a litany of mistakes. The third time, they actually got a penalty to get themselves in the lead and to use a bit of, and they actually kicked it to go 8-7 up. But they were making clean breaks, whereas the Italians weren't. And I think that led to the territory stat of, in the first half, 65% to France and only 35% to Italy. Italy just couldn't really get out of their own half the whole game, really, but especially in that first half where they didn't make any line breaks at all. And
yeah, it's true. I mean, France got that try within 5 minutes, and that penalty, that Machino kick that you mentioned, that was nearly 28 and a half minutes gone. So it made line break after line break for 24 odd minutes and nothing.
Yep, we had they were butchering their chances, and if we're going to come back to when we get towards the end, we'll probably be talking about that they scored 3 tries. They missed out on the try bonus point, and they've only got themselves to blame for this one, I think, really, and which is what is going to keep them down in that 5th place, even if they do get a victory over Wales or England in their last 2 games.
Absolutely. Especially that try just after half time. Benvenuti, I think, got a hand in just to knock it back, but the pass shouldn't have been thrown. It should have just been kept, recycled, and probably a try would have came from it. There's your bonus point, you know. And they'll regret that big time. But again, just like Grado taking a 5-meter tap and go and stuff like this, they only have themselves to blame, really.
Absolutely. There was that sort of things. But there were some positives out of this. I mean, we make a lot of jokes about Bastereau's size, but he played a good game today, didn't he?
He had a fantastic game.
Yeah.
Was he man of the match in the end? Because I suspect if he wasn't, he probably should have been.
Yeah, I him or Camera, but
well, yeah, Camera. Let's try and just familiarise myself with the names quickly. I think because the three that properly stood out to me, although I'm sure there were a few more, were Bastereau, Camera, and Remy Grosso.
Yep, Grosso out on the left wing. All of France's good work seemed to come down the left.
Bastereau played the best game I think I've ever seen him play. Just because it's. I mean, I'm sure I was going to comment on his size, but it just doesn't seem fair.
Well,
Ashton did a fair amount of that at half time.
3 years, and to do that,
I don't think his size has changed. I think he's always been that big, but the amount of work he was getting through, not just the carrying, but the tackling, the fetching, because I think he won at least 2 or maybe 3 turnovers on his own.
He had 3
turnovers. Doing a lot of work, acting as a scrum half off the base of a ruck. His passing is better than I've seen it before. And granted, I haven't paid much attention to the top 14 in the last couple of seasons, but if he's playing like that regularly with Toulon, then I'd be very impressed.
Even for Bonneval's try, he threw an offload that if Sonny Bill Williams threw it, Twitter would explode.
Yeah.
So looking at the stats, he got through 15 carries, which was second highest, only behind Tuileague, the number 8 there, who also had a good game. Admittedly, his 15 carries only went for 34 meters, so he didn't run very far each time. But he was getting through a lot of work, releasing players outside him. He'd quite often make a little outside break, then let the ball go, and then you'd have Gruson making the yard. So he got himself over 106 meters, was the only person over 100 meters in the game with his 10 runs. So Grusso and that combination with Bastereau out on that side really did work. I think what we did also saw though was France came into this game dropping, I think it was 7 players for having a bit ill discipline on a night out in Edinburgh, and that brought some foul onto the other side, and he had a shocker.
Who, sorry?
Foul, F-A-L-L.
Benjamin Fall, yeah.
Oh, foul, yeah.
He didn't do much, did he?
I'm sure he did a couple of things that I picked up on that were pretty decent, but I can't for the life of me remember what now.
He put a chip through. He did make some meters, but he always seemed to me to back it up with an error afterwards. And a bit like the crossfield kick, he took well and then was stripped as soon as he was tackled. So he did a lot of good things, but then would always kind of mess it up at the end of it.
Yeah. I think the other side of that, what was I going to say? I was going to mention in a similar vein, I don't know whether it's whether I just completely couldn't pay attention to it or not. I don't think I noticed Lionel Berksees until about 35 minutes into the game. And then I started to notice him just having an absolute shocker. I'm sure he did a couple of decent things. He had a couple of decent kicks.
He put Laurie through for a super run, maybe 10 minutes in. He played very flat, played very wide, was happy to play quick. He wasn't unbelievable, but he was much better than I thought he would have been. But his passing, his flat passing, his distribution was very, very good in fairness. Aside from that, didn't really light it up for me, to be honest.
And I think the other thing that perhaps you quite often don't see that flat pass. You're actually looking at the person who's doing the run rather than the passer. But what you do see is when these guys are kicking, and the kicking today was either too long or too short, especially from Italy. It was atrocious. Yeah, exactly.
I think the tactical kicking all around from both sides is terrible. because there was either no chase or it was just aimless.
Yeah, I think
I
Nioli and
understand
Allen for Italy were very, very poor. Boxy's poor out of hand. Machino's exits in the last 20 were excellent, I thought, in fairness to that. But again, there was very little chase, especially from Paul. Grosso got in the air now and again, but I mean, for the work that Machino did to make that kick perfect, it deserved more of a reward. But Nioli and Allen for the Italians, shocking.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I also want to just point out how sort of how tight this game was in parts. So I mean, we had Negri, the flanker on the Italian side, did 15 carries. Geraldini had 7. Madan 9, and there was a lot of close carrying from Italy. And French did the exact same thing. Both Giraudeau 13 carries. We've already talked about the number 8 Camara, who 11 carries, along with Garibaldi. I mean, the forwards got through a lot of work in this game, and I was surprised that they stayed on so long, and that a lot of the substitutions didn't really come into effect until around about the 70th minute.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that's just a sign of the depth of the teams, considering France have dropped 7 players and Italy just don't have depth and they just don't trust their bench, or whether the pace of the game was slow enough that they could keep going.
I'm fairly sure there are some positions where Italy won't trust their bench. But I think in some instances it's... would you load? This isn't going to load.
I think teams are rarely inclined to use many substitutes if it's a close game. And I mean, up till the 58th minute, it was still a 4-point game. So if you think that your players are going well, if you think that they have a chance to turn it around, you're going to leave them on. You're not going to whip them off for the sake of making a substitute, especially if they're, doing good things like you said there. Like, let's say, for example, Negri was an animal tonight. And just because you think maybe a certain player could bring something to it, when there's only 4 points in the game, you're not going to do that just for the sake of doing it. You're going to wait until he's either completely gassed or the game is gone. And essentially, after the 58th minute, when Italy went 11 down, that's when the kind of subs started flooding in. And I'd say that's why maybe it took so long to get them in. But again, if that was Italy starting 9 and 10, I wouldn't really trust the sub 9 and 10 to win the game either, to be honest.
Yeah, that's very true. So basically, as you say, it was a 4-point game up until about the 57th minute. Italy didn't make their first clean break until 55 minutes, and the only thing that was keeping them in it was basically France making too many errors. After that, France decided, you know what, we're making too many errors. What we'll do is we'll actually start kicking sticks, get the scoreboard ticking over, drag ourselves so that we're well ahead. And then pick up a couple of tries late on. And as we've said for Italy for a long time, that they're good for 60 odd minutes, but that's really really it for me as far as I can tell.
Wow.
Yeah,
I was going to say something you said there about Italy not really doing much until France made mistakes. I think there is a sense that it's almost the same is just as true the other way around. Certainly for the first half. I was going to pick up on something else.
At least in the first half, France made 3 line breaks, whereas Italy didn't manage even 1.
That's fair enough. I'm just going to try because I did want to bring up
Italy didn't have a single line break.
Italy didn't have a single line break until the 55th minute.
Wow.
Or clean break. Sorry, clean break rather than maybe line break. They only managed three clean breaks all game. France had 8, and to say that France only scored 3 tries off 8 clean breaks shows how much they really butchered their opportunity to get the try bonus point in this game.
Yeah. There we go. That came on that early. Why did George Biaggi come on in the 34th minute? Did I complete? Was that a head knock or blood sub? Because it looks like
HIA.
We had a HIA.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. In that case, Bud failed the HIA. As I say, I wanted to bring up at least a few positives for Italy because, as aimless as they seem to be, for the majority of the match. There were at least a couple of players that I thought looked not just deserving of their place in the squad, but like they were actually trying while on the pitch. And I think mostly that is their two flankers, starting flankers, Mabanda and Negri. Yeah, and Biagi when he came on, because he got through, I think, 15 tackles for the 45 odd minutes he was on. And certainly, if any Italian player is deserving of a try, I think it was Minotti getting his at the end. But yeah, again, it was. I think one of the biggest tragedies is Parise is still very much a fantastic player, but he's a shadow of the player he was, I think, and I'm not sure how much it's affecting them by keeping him as a starting player and not bringing through anyone else, or do they actually not have anyone better to come in and take his place at 8 so that he can come off the bench after some amount of time?
There's probably an element of what you're truth that there's people are used to him doing so much extra, and that he can't do it now. They still think he will, and they're not stepping up themselves. And that's been one of the points.
I think Negri is the man to take that spot.
But you mentioned that people don't step up. I'm sure I can remember in Six Nations gone past, at least one or two where Parise's had some form of injury, and the team as a whole has seemed almost better without him, in the sense that when he is on the pitch, there's an over-reliance in what he has to do or what he himself feels the need to do and the work he has to get done.
Parise went to take a drop goal to win the game a couple of years ago.
He did that 2 years ago. He's done it well. He's done it successfully a couple of times. But yeah, 2 years ago, it just about lost them the game against France.
But you shouldn't have your 8 kind of dependent to make these decisions, you know?
Well, he is the captain. But,
no, I mean to take the drop goal.
Yeah. But as I say, there are times where it feels like, were he not in the team, the rest of the team kind of pick themselves up, and when he is in the team, he just takes on too much of the loads, and so it kind of, I find it hampers a few other areas of Italy's dynamic, I suppose.
Yeah, and there's an element of, I remember when Rono O'Gara, for example, was coming towards the end of his career, it was great having someone like him to come off the bench, a steadying influence to finish things off, having that experience come off the bench. And maybe that's where they should be looking at having a chat with Parise and saying, hey, look, you're an old warhorse, you're not as fit as you used to be. How about we look after you a little bit by giving you 20 minutes a game where you can come on, the game's opening up, you can go barnstorming as much as you like and really enjoy it and see how he would take on that.
There was, again, just to play both sides of that briefly, there was something that was brought up in the pre-match punditry when they were having a long interview with Conor O'Shea. I kind of got the feeling that he convinced Parise to stay on, and so perhaps, especially in this transition, as O'Shea tries to sort of overhaul Italian rugby as a whole from the ground up, that having Parise there as either as a talisman or as some kind of, I don't know, a symbol or what's the best way?
Talisman.
I'm not sure the best way to put it. Yeah,
but the leadership he brings, yes,
carry through as from the past, the previous eras, I suppose, to keep a measure of cohesion within the team. And so I suppose if it is perhaps a season too long, too much for him, whether it's still going to be, long term, help the Italian team as a whole, even if not short term, perhaps be a slight detriment. But again, I don't want to say, I really don't want to be too negative about that, because he is still, I do still think he's a phenomenal player, and I just enjoy watching him play. But certainly today I was quite worried that a couple of times he went down, and I thought he might not stand back up again because he took what looked like a relatively innocuous hit, but it seemed to affect him quite badly.
Well, you'd hate to see him be one of these boxers who goes on and fights one or two too many fights than he should do. to use an analogy. But I did hear in the commentary they said that when he went down, one of those things like, oh, this might be the last time we see Parisi in an international in a Italy jersey, and you're like, oh, is he retiring at the end of the Six Nations? But I see what you're saying. I think there might be an element of that he is perhaps close to international retirement.
But yeah, even if he does take such a knock that puts him out for certainly this tournament, it'll affect his fitness. It'll affect. I mean, he's 34 now, so even for a forward, he's getting on. And it's just kind of how much would that hamper him going forward? Because God knows wherever Italy are going in the summer. But were he to have such a knock at the moment to put him out, I imagine it would put him out for enough of a stretch to have some kind of knock-on effect with the tour later on. But as it stands, again, going back to whether they need him as a talisman or not, the World Cup is about, 19 months away, 20 months away? And you've got to wonder, you can see both sides of the argument as to whether he should or shouldn't be part of that team.
I'd want to take him as part of the squad. Whether I'd have him starting or not, I don't know. But I think it would be...
Having him part of the squad should be really important. But again, they've got to bring through new talent and develop someone to take over the mantle. But would they then miss the quality he does bring?
Perhaps, or maybe he even goes as a loose forwards coach, so that he brings his leadership in, but he doesn't have to sort of have the playing part of it as well. I'm not saying as a full-time coach, but maybe as a temporary Rugby World Cup coach for Italy, because Italy have had consultants in the past, such as Bernard Venter from South Africa as a defensive coach. So take him on as a consultant culture coach for the Rugby World Cup, maybe.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, any final points before we talk about whether Italy are improving or not, and the future for France?
I think just in regards to that last point about Parisi, is he going to be a captain? Is he still going to be a regular starter for the next World Cup? Maybe this would have been a nice time to pass the leadership role onto maybe, I don't know, Geraldini again, or perhaps Mbanda or Negri, who I really feel if Italy were awarded a man of the match, it probably would have been Negri. He was everywhere. But 19 months away is a lot of rugby. For someone who is 34, I'm not saying it's not possible because it's been done, but if Italy want to progress, is he going to be a World Cup captain? I don't think so. I think it's too far away. So in terms of Italy progressing, they are doing it. It was not obvious from that game, but if you see in the top 14, for example, Zebra, the double over Connacht this year so far, Treviso in Europe, they didn't win a game, but they pushed the likes of Toulon right to the edge. They pushed Bath right to the edge, Scarlets right to the edge. So they are coming along. I think O'Shea, whatever he's doing in Italy, I think it is working. I think it will take time to bear fruit. Everything does. Every big transition takes time to grow and to bear fruit, but it is working. You can tell even from travelling Italian sides, coming to Ireland and stuff like that are travelling to Wales, travelling to Scotland, they are becoming, not all the time, but more challenging. They're no longer seen as kind of okay, this is 5 points, lovely. It's like even the last day, Zebra against Connacht, I know I mentioned this already, but they put 21 points on Connacht and still won the game. So they're becoming a bit more resilient. They're becoming a bit more of that winning culture, and that's beginning to grow. I do think it will take time, especially having, let's say, the likes of Canna on the bench. I felt Canna probably should have started today instead of Allen at 10, especially based on last week against Connacht. He was very, very good. He was released for that game. He probably would have been more at ease, especially with the backline being pretty much dominated by Zebra today. But I think if you're going to say Italian rugby, is it getting better? Yeah, slowly, but inevitably it is.
I guess the counter-argument to that is they've been in the Six Nations for 18 years now, or this is their 18th year. They have more wooden spoons than they have wins in the competition. And let's be honest, I don't think any of us can see. Well, personally, sorry, I shouldn't put words into your mouths, guys. I can't see Italy winning a game in this Six Nations. So I think that was their best chance against France, because who I think are going to come, who I've got down as coming fifth in this tournament. So from an international point of view, I can't see much that they've gained over the last, say, 5 years. But I do take your point that domestically, the two sides are doing a lot better this season. But the question is, can we, when or how quickly can we see that coming through to the national team? I guess.
I think if we're going to have the argument of Georgia, then I don't think I like Georgia as a team. They are doing well, but in terms of geography, revenue, I don't think it would work. I think if we're going to include a team in the Six Nations, probably maybe Romania or Spain, who had a big win there last week. But in terms of Six Nations, I can't see Italy being relegated, as they say, for a while, at least for a couple of years more, at least.
Edwin, you going to come in there?
I mean, we mentioned. I'm sure we went through a fair amount of. I'm sure we mentioned the Georgia chat when you had me and Sav on the chat a week or two ago. So my feelings are still very much that I do. It is. I will admit outright that it is getting harder to defend the position, but I do still very much think that Italy not just earned their place, but do still deserve it. And it's trying to back that up is getting harder. And I do understand where the arguments come from to have Georgia or another team come in. But I think if you're going to have that conversation, there are so many other ways that it could go off in. And considering the various, financially speaking, there are so many issues there that would crop up losing one team in particular, even if it is Italy. But Conor O'Shea is, I think, part of a 6-year turnaround, I believe he's contracted for. And he is doing everything from grassroots up to the senior men's team. And while I'm sure there is certainly a degree there that perhaps he's taking on more than would be ideal, I think we have to give it at least another season or two before we write them off completely. Because, as you've said, it's Treviso and Zebra are improving and then they're getting better. There are flashes and glimpses of greatness coming through the senior team. And while, yes, I would also agree that today was probably the best chance they had this Six Nations to steal a win, I think the idea of relegating them or getting rid of them is... I just think, I think it's probably a conversation best left until after the Six Nations has actually finished for the season. But there are other things to take into account for the fact that, 3 months ago, Italy beat South... 3 months ago or a year and 3 months ago?
A year and 3 months ago, Italy beat South Africa, you're going to say, and then they lost to Fiji or Tonga the next week.
Yeah, so there is something... Looking just at those results, on the face of it, there is something there to be said that South Africa must have been going through an absolutely fucking torrid time. I just swore, excuse me, I didn't mean to do that.
Beep.
I do get it. I do understand that it does, for all intents and purposes, look like they've regressed. Because even if they have improved, every other team in the competition shows, well, maybe not France, they're just something else entirely. But certainly the home nations, they show more improvement, or there is a more obvious indication of their improvement. But
yeah, what you're saying is the gap's grown rather than shrunk, even if everyone's moving forwards. Yep.
But I think it does Italy a disservice to dismiss them, and I think it undermines the progress they have made. Which, again, it might not seem very much looking on the face of it now, but I think it is there.
Cool. So anyway, just to wrap this up, that show where we talked about it previously was actually when it was me on your show.
That's right.
So if people want to go to that, they can go and watch go listen to the Line Break Rugby podcast to hear that kind of views. My basic views are that maybe Italy doesn't deserve the place, but I don't think anyone deserves it more than they do. If you want the full details of that, go to the Line Break Rugby podcast or become a patron of Driving Maul, patreon.com/DrivingMaul. And I've done a exclusive video for my Patreons, only from $1 a month you can become a Patreon, going into depth into this as to why I don't think that. But yeah, I agree with you guys that I don't think Georgia should be replacing Italy in the Six Nations. And now where does this leave France, though? Obviously, they've managed to drop 7 players and still come away with a commanding victory of 34-17. Are we seeing progression from them, or just too many errors, and against another team they would have been put to bed much earlier?
I think the answer is obvious at this stage, and it's going on the back of the performances so far of the past 3 rounds that we actually drop France and Italy from the Six Nations entirely, revert back to the home nations, and everyone plays each other twice rather than once. That is only partially joking. France, they are such a strange team because everyone, there is the whole, again, with the cliche of which France are going to turn up. And it's usually both, but one more than the other. But if you look, their game against Ireland was basically stalemate until Johnny Sexton pulled out the most amazing drop goal from nowhere. They looked like they should have beaten Scotland until Scotland decided to actually think, oh, we're actually playing a game here, we should try winning it. And then they don't win convincingly against Italy until the last half hour, where teams have usually won by that point and then start, putting them to the sword. But it was the same time frame where they're now getting the win in of itself. So they are as up in the air as ever. And if you take into account they've got a new coach, take into account the players they've currently not got playing, and the team they could play. If you had guys like Fofana fit and in form or whatever, there is so much potential there that is constantly being, they get so close and then they just miss. And so there is something special there, but whatever it is, they can't quite take advantage of it at the moment.
I think we give France a lot of stick for maybe their domestic league, kind of the state of the squad at the moment. But I think if we look back at the games, it was a stalemate against Ireland, fair enough. Neither team really got to open up. Scotland, they put Scotland to the sword, essentially, in a game they probably could have won tonight. Yeah, I know a very poor Italy side, but they failed to get the bonus point, but let's say they eventually open up. You'd have to think maybe before France, 4 points in it with 50-odd 8 minutes gone, would they have opened up the way they did maybe 6 months ago? Probably not. I think they are improving. I think Brunel's only had the side for 3 games. He's not afraid to kind of cut the mustard. Dropping those, I think it was 8 guys he dropped altogether, shows he's not afraid to develop a culture. He's not afraid to tell guys, your behaviour is not good enough. He's not willing to accept this whole, we're transitioning. He's happy just to cut the guys and say, we'll win without you. I know Picamoles will probably find it difficult to get back in the squad, especially after that performance tonight. But essentially, I think if they had a full year's preparation coming into the Six Nations, would they have beat Scotland in the end? Maybe. Would they have beat Ireland in the end? Would have been just as close. They would have thumped Italy, based the way Italy played tonight. I think they're on the right path nationally. I think they still have a lot of problems domestically, but I think Brunel so far has done an okay job. You can talk about the 8 guys last week. You can't expect Brunel to go out and hold 40 guys' hands when they go out in the beer in Scotland. But essentially, I do think he is doing a good job. He is on the right path. I think with time he will be able to change them up. I think he may need another Conor O'Shea to maybe do a domestic overhaul in France too, but maybe that will come with time. But no, I think he's doing an okay job so far. I think he's maybe can go to bed tonight quite happy. Maybe unhappy about losing the bonus point, but I mean, France on 6 points now. Would that be right? Did they get the bonus against Scotland? 5 or 6 points. You know, it's not too bad so far. So I'd say so far so good for Brunel, even though he's 1 out of 3.
Yeah, and I must admit, I've been. We're going to see how well this experiment he's got going there, where he doesn't have permanent assistant coaches. So I very much doubted he was going to be able to do much. But as you say, after 3 games, they were in there until the end against Ireland. I haven't seen the Scotland-France game. I need to go back and watch that one. And they have gone in the end, won this one comfortably. So they aren't the total mess that I was expecting from them, to be honest. And maybe they are building well. And in a year and a half's time, when we come to Rugby World Cup, they'll have just about got things together and challenge yet again. So, boys, thank you very much for your time. We have overrun, as we normally do, but it's always fun chatting. Ed, we might need to reschedule and have a Six Nations Brexit podcast after your home nations suggestion there to talk through that. I'm not sure the Irish friends would appreciate the name, but anyway, Ed, why don't you let people know where they can listen to your dulcet tones and get in touch during the week?
Well, my dulcet tones, certainly. Our YouTube channel is Linebreak Rugby, and we have a website, which I believe is also linebreakrugby.com. The podcast is ever so slightly more active than the articles on the website. Just a smidge. It doesn't get very often. I'm not selling us very well here.
You know, maybe not the biggest, not the biggest best salesman of William. They're also very active on Reddit, the rugby subreddit as well, so you can catch their stuff there. And also, obviously, they have a Twitter handle as well. So get in touch with the Linebreak Rugby in between. And the Loose Head. This has been your debut to the video world. How can people get in touch with you and join in between games?
Yeah, so a couple of podcasts done, but first time showing the face. If they want to get in touch, just use the Twitter handle at the Loose H. Someone stole the Loose Head before I got a chance, so at the Loose H. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And there's a Facebook page too that's slightly active, I suppose, and an Instagram page, but Twitter's the place anyway.
Cool. And don't forget to subscribe. My face will be about there on the recording, or you can go down below if you're watching live to subscribe to the YouTube DrivingMaul YouTube channel. Obviously, at DrivingMaul, Twitter is where I love to hang out. There's also a DrivingMaul podcast and a DrivingMaul website for all your rugby predictions and opinions. And up there, there'll be a box on the recording with my latest video. So do go and check that out. Have a great evening all. I will be back with live post-match reaction to the Crusaders versus the Chiefs this evening, and tomorrow I'll be back for Scotland versus England with the Maul Over podcast. So it's been great, and catch you all next time.